Hello, everyone, and God bless you. I assume nobody would be here tonight, or maybe I would get one person. They probably thought I was going to show. I'm sorry about that. I hope you had a blessed 4th of July. It was my street was very quiet, but you could hear other people letting off fireworks. But there's only one house. I took a walk with my dog a few days ago, and there's one house that had flags, lots of flags. I went up to them because I live in a very liberal state, and I read something on a placard on this 4-sided monument that was outside the oldest graveyard in the city. It was talking about the architecture and who did it, and some of the monuments in the graveyard and how beautiful they were and who did them. And it told about a Native American family that was still living in the area. And on one side, it said, unfortunately, the older graves, or the oldest graves in this graveyard, are all of white men only. I just said, can you imagine if you're a little boy reading it? Immediately, you are... I just can imagine what a little boy will feel, and he hasn't done anything yet. I think it's kind of sad. I said, well, okay, what made this town, the people who made this town, all this architecture you're talking about, and the reason why the town is the way it was, and there's a college in it. There's a lot of good people that did a lot of good things, irrespective of the color of their skin. You know, people do good things irrespective. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. We know people, all ethnicities, and there's only one race, the human race. We all have talents. And right now, you know, these little boys, or you're only guilty of what you're guilty of, not what grand ancestors did. And if they have no talent, they have no talent. Maybe these were the only people who had that kind of talent. I don't see houses looking like that anymore. So to me, like, you have great artists and great people of the past that did things that we cannot copy today. You thank them, but even people with it's irrespective of their gender or their ethnicity or religion. It's irrespective of that, whether they have talents and gifts. And we know that all people do. And we know that very well in this country. And if there isn't something in your own life that there's lots of things in your life, I'm sure you can find people of all religions, hello there out there. How you doing? Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing up. And this is a prayer stream that I said I would do for Deflating Atheism, which is Rob, who has joined me many times during my shows, all different kinds of, hello there, Black Samurai, it's you. How you doing? Yes, he didn't go into it. He said he's got something wrong with his eyelid. It could be anything. I mean, it could be something serious, you know. There could be tumor, could be cancer, could be anything. But he didn't go into it with me. He just said to say prayers. So I said I would. And apparently, I'm not quite sure exactly. I wasn't going to do a rosary because I wanted this to be ecumenical. I didn't want anybody to think. I wanted everybody who wanted to pray was comfortable saying whatever prayers that we were doing, because this is open to all people. And everything is open to all people, but some people, I don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable. And there's so many things going on now in the world that we want to keep our minds on. You know, there's a lot of things that happen. It seems like every single day there is something that happens. Hello there, I'm Creator. How are you doing? How's the praying coming? Is it working yet? We don't know. Okay, but we do know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And it does cause a lot of people stress, you know. There's a lot of things I read, things going on in London. Apparently, the districts, they're actually swallowing up other districts. And they say that there's too much, the air quality isn't clear. And so they want to eliminate the cars coming into the city. And some cars there's a family who has a child who's handicapped. In fact, I have on my channel, this channel has no commentary section because you have to have at least 100, I think at least 100 subscribers, and I don't have that yet here. But there are people who are very poor, who cannot afford electric vehicles, which run on, of course they do run on, nearly all 98% run on natural gas, which burns clean, by the way. It burns clean. So there really shouldn't be any issue. But these people cannot afford, and they are rescuing animals. And there's a family who has to take 2 cars because the child has a wheelchair. And so it's the poorest of the people. People will be out of business, and these these animals will have no place to go and no medical help. So a lot of them are going to die. And I thought we would keep that in our prayers, in our thoughts. And if you don't believe in prayer, you know, maybe there's something you think you can do, like it does take more than prayer, because God helps those who help themselves, right? We can't just sit back, but what prayer can do, if you don't believe in a God, is, they're teaching this now in not high school, but just the schools in New York City. It's called mindfulness, a type of Buddhist meditation. And it is to keep yourself calm. And if you're calm and relaxed, and you kind of you take the burden that you can't solve at the moment, because we all work on, because of evolution, we work on stress. You know, the reason why, when we feel like we need to do something, like an animal, way back when animal was coming to attack us, so our stress hormones kicked up. And that's where we get so much cortisol, because we're not as inactive. We don't move every time we have that feeling. And so you have to move immediately. And since we're not, it creates health problems because we're not doing anything. So when we hear of these bad, like blocking out the sun. See, there's another thing we need to pray for. And I say pray for, and you could sit and meditate and just relax, be mindful, because this is pretty stressful, because I want plants to get what they need. And there's 2 things that they need: carbon. The more carbon they get, the more water, or the less water they need. And sunlight, which kicks off the process of photosynthesis. I know this is science. And which creates chlorophyll, which is what creates the carbohydrates in the plants. So if you want to save the world, you can't block out sunlight, because that's creating a volcanic winter. They're going to do it high in the atmosphere, very, very high in the atmosphere. It doesn't even cost much, but I think about $300 million. And it creates a volcanic winter, which has always created famine and plague. And as you know, that we don't do very well with plagues. We had one recently. And the poor people of the world, you know, we're trying to create, there are poor people in the world that we have to ship loads of food over to all these countries, right? They need that. And they need a way. You can't stop the ships from moving. So they need some kind of fuel, right? But we can't also, I don't think it's right that these people should die either. I don't think it's right that people should be denied health care, especially disabled people. These are things that we are little people, and we've got very big, very wealthy people in charge. Remember, power and money, that's the greatest sin of all is power and money, because it makes you do things. Hello there, John Harrison. How are you? I've prayed that all anti-theists, new atheists would start saying intelligent, informed things about religion, but alas. Well, I'm talking about science now, too, and what's really going on in the world here. You know, I mean, I know about science, and they are making us deny it. It's you know what I thought of today? That, you know, there's a certain political ideology that ruled in the 20th century. And what it did was it flipped words. Words had different meanings. You know, they said that if you were revolutionary, as if you literally spied on your neighbors, had people in prison for wrongthink, if you didn't agree with the leaders, one party rule, they were swallowing up other nations, which is not national, because there's two forms of this, and they're both cousins. And both of them wanted to swallow up the world. And one of them was named, the first word was National Socialist Workers' Party, and the other one was United Soviet Socialist Republic, all based on socialism. And socialism in the George Bernard Shaw, if you hear him talking, it's kind of scary, because he talks about people who shouldn't even be alive. There's people that we need to mass exterminate because they're just a burden on society. They're just useless eaters. And I know I've known atheists, like the most famous atheists. One of the most famous atheists of our time was Christopher Hitchens, and he thought that was horrendous. He didn't think you needed to believe in a God to know that kind of thinking was wrong. And he was for free speech. He was vehemently against censored speech, control. So these ideologies, two branches of the same ideology, basically they were globalists. They wanted to take up the whole world. So it wasn't really a national thing, even though one had national in its name, which meant the country that it came out of. But it was really, they wanted to swallow up the whole world. And by doing it, both of these countries were exterminating the elderly and the disabled. It's the first thing they do. You have to cull the population. These are useless eaters. And we're hearing that being echoed now amongst the wealthiest and most powerful among us. But what they did was they switched words. So if you're against that particular ideology, you are an anti-revolutionary. If you were for it, you were revolutionary. Words meant different things. So plants need carbon and sunlight to produce, for the photosynthesis, to produce chlorophyll, right? So therefore, also nitrogen, which they're saying is a problem, but you know that farms all over the world import nitrogen because the soil needs it, because it makes protein. Nitrogen is essential. They're saying that there's a problem, there's so many, because there's certain farmlands will be going all wild soon, because they're going to eliminate them. That there's certain gases, but any compost pile produces those gases, you know. And one gas is methane, which is what natural gas is. And when you burn it, it burns clean, so it burns it off. When it hits air, it changes to water and carbon is what plants need. fact, it was recommended that the factory, all the carbon from the factories get pumped into greenhouses, and that grows the food. So there's your answer for everything. Basically, you could grow tons of food. So I was thinking today that it's interesting that what they're calling green energy is actually non-recyclable, killing hundreds of millions of birds, completely sanitizing the environment and sanitizing the ocean floor. And they're extremely toxic. So you cannot recycle them, and you can't bury them in a landfill. So I hope Musk takes all of it when it breaks down. I think in a matter of 10 years, it's a very short period of time, all made with slave labor, all mining the earth using child labor. I hope he builds his rocket ship and takes it to Mars. That's what I hope he does with it, because he's got a rocket ship, and so does Bezos. They should both take the broken down. But what are they going to do? So if green energy, so that's green, and you want to remove the stuff that actually makes plants not only not need as much water, but that's what makes them green and vibrant and teeming with life. Like during the Jurassic period, there's 15 times more carbon in the air than now, which is only 0.04%. 0.0, that's not even 1%, that's 0.04%. And when it hits 0.02%, all life on Earth starts to die. When they started this campaign, it was 0.03%. And they said, oh no, we're warming. We're warming because we entered an ice age in 1850. And the Earth slowly warms. But then when it hit the 1970s, they said, we have to paint the Arctic black. See, this is their grand ideas, just like blocking out the sun, which is going to kill most of the Earth. But this is, I think, it's going to, they're opening up real estate around the equator. Did you know that? Did you realize that? On huge amounts, they're opening up that real estate. And you're buying them into countries that have winter, yet these countries have no heat because people can't afford heat for the winter. So how long are these people going to survive? Especially people who are not used to winter. How long are these people going to survive? It's huge. It's like, so the amount of time it takes to change everything over and to change the numbers of the population of the planet, the people with money will go down and buy that real estate, won't they? Because we're not just talking south of here, we're also talking Africa, because they're coming up into Europe, right? It's better living there. Well, you can see why. You can't fault them, and they don't understand that there are people here who are homeless and poor and that need help and don't have fuel in the winter. They don't realize this, and that's not their fault. Not blaming them. They are being encouraged. And of course, with the drug flow, lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people are dying every year. So green, so our idea of green, especially if you eliminate farms create all this. What do you mean? I thought plants and organic farming is composting, and it creates ammonias, methane, and all that stuff as it breaks down. So I thought that was good, but I guess organic is bad, composting must be bad, though the king over there does it. And 15 years ago, and I can't find it now on the web, 15 years ago, this has been brewing inside me, let me tell you. There's so many things to pray for. I don't know if our friend is still here. But see, there's so many things that are going on in this world that it doesn't, See, one of the reasons why people pray is because there's a lot of things that we absolutely cannot do. And we have to put it in the hands of a higher power. Otherwise, we will die of cancer. There's the crisis is the poisons in the water. The poisons in the water. They say there's a poison from dry cleaning that's been in the water since the 20s. And it causes Parkinson's disease. And there's a whole host of things that are happening with the poisons in the water. But nobody's talking about that. But that ends up killing us quickly, and we're dependent on what? The medical industry for all their help and needs. So why talk about that? Talk about, let's not have anything healthy to eat. Let's not have anything to eat. Let's freeze to death in the winter. Mercury in the water, yeah. Buying real estate in Africa, that's right. That's right. All over the world. But you do know who the number one buyer of farmland is. And we think it's for bugs, but I think there aren't going to be, or maybe whoever of us is left are going to eat the bugs. That's right. And I ended up, when I passed by this house in my city after reading that placard, oh my God. If I saw this house, I said to the guy with all the American flags, the city's going to arrest your house, He said, I don't get the newspaper, but he said that they apologized, that the town wasn't highly populated with African American people. They regret that. People, of course, also poor people can't afford to live here either. They can't afford to live anywhere. That's why you should improve their schools, because they deserve it, because many people are very intelligent. The school when I went to just was really, really crappy. It's like if you didn't get it, they didn't try to figure out why you weren't learning. Like if there was something serious going on at home. Why you're afraid all the time, why you get beat up at school all the time. They didn't stop and say, there's something going on, let's protect this child. They don't think that. So why would they, even if the schools here were populated by African Americans, they would get poor education too, right? I got poor education. They just wanted to get you out. That's what they do. So that's what has to change. And because I think everyone deserves it, there's so much unrealized potential, and it does start in from the start of your education. It's not just the end. The end, most drop out. That's the problem. It's just so sad. And they're telling us, oh, those who have nothing, that it's our fault. So we pray. Some pray to center themselves. Some pray to put it in the hands of a higher power. If you let go the stress, the anxiety, that every single day something ridiculous, and nobody's saying this is ridiculous, stop. Do you know that this is anti-science? So when it was 0.03% 30 years ago, that was before China and all these countries who we let off the hook, Paris Accord, the people care about the climate, during the administration to administration's way, let certain countries off the hook, which included the country they hate, which is Russia. Russia, India, Sri Lanka, China, Africa, South America. China is even buying Italy. And I'm sure there's other countries too that have no regulations on emissions at all. And these factories are being put up one every 6 days, 5 or 6 days, and dumping poisons in the water supply, and all the plastics are coming from all these in the oceans. So it's impossible for me to believe. I don't know what this is healthy for, except for it's killing the environment. And if you change from 2% green energy, they call it green. It's not renewable. It's not recyclable. Carbon dioxide is. The second you breathe it out, which it's in such small amounts, it's turned into oxygen because the plants absorb it. If you switch from these things that are actually killing the environment, you switch from that to switch from fossil fuels to that, and it's 100% those things, I don't know what land you're going to have left. I mean, they cover mountains with these solar panels. You have to sanitize the land. You remove the habitat of everything. And they're telling our children, they're going, no, my Prince George is going to bed scared at night because he's so worried. You know, he's so worried, but it's what you're doing. And then what's going to happen is, yes, there's going to be a mass die-off. And they're going to look at us and say, it's because we told you it was the carbon. You told you, and somehow it's our fault. Honestly, what did we do then exist? And it's not really. No, you blocked out the sun and you are sanitizing the world. And for some reason, you have a war ongoing with the birds, too. Not only every living thing that exists, you wonder why the orcas are smashing into boats. I think it's because they've never seen where is their habitat. They're killing it by pouring all this concrete in the ocean and putting these wind turbines, which is sanitizing the environment. So that's the opposite of green. And when you switch that over, I don't know how much of a world you're going to have left. And that's science. You know, and we've started this with our friend that came here. That's an atheist. This is fact. This is science. This is fact, and this is what we're looking at. And people, how many times have I said that they are trying to get rid of? You get rid of these ideologies, killed the disabled and the poor and the weak and the elderly. They culled the population. That's what they did. It's the number keeps going up. It's about 150 million because you have to add up all these countries together, and they're the two cousin ideologies. People forget that there's other, like there was Pol Pot, wasn't just Mao's great leap forward, great idea. Oh, China's going to be the mass producer of steel. So he said everybody had to melt down their pots and pans and utensils and give it to the government. What happened was, in 4 years, 45 million people died. That was the Great Leap Forward. No, it was the second one, the Great Leap Forward. And the Cultural Revolution, what it did was supposed to sanitize the culture, sanitize the past. The only thing that exists right now is the dictator. And the rules change every single day. So and by the 70s, there's 7-8 million that died. They didn't realize that 45 million died in 4 years. Of course, there's that other big country that used to have that ideology. This is probably kind of authoritarian now, but it ended with, basically it went bankrupt. And that's why America did so well during the 90s. That's why people look back at Clinton as, oh, it's only sex. Isn't that what sex? And he protected the women's rights. And it came out that he did some things to some women, very bad, but that's okay as long as you protected these other rights. So the hypocrisy, but people look back at that era as very good because, but they don't realize it's because the Soviet Union fell because they were the two biggest world economies in the world was the U.S. and USSR. and that fell. So let's see, that anyone would trust. It's more than China. You know what I mean? It's more than China. I think we can name the people. 15 years ago, I heard the new leader that was over there in jolly old. 15 years ago, he did this weird slithering rant saying we have to keep the wild places wild. Got to keep the wild places have to be wild. And he's just going on and on. We should, whatever places, we should make them all wild. And he belongs to this group. And I think each of one is in charge of something as far as the world goes. He must be in charge of eliminating farms and turning them into wild places. So that's what's going to happen in the Netherlands. They're getting rid of all the farming, which gives food to the people of Europe. And you have a lot of migrants moving in. So if you cared about the migrants, where's the food? And if you cared about the migrants, wait a second, there's water shortages in the summer, isn't there? At least there is here. And you want clean water. There's going to be a lot more people dependent on water sources, and you need a lot more food. So this guy who owns almost 7 billion acres of the world's best real estate is telling us that we have to rewild the planet. This is, and so I think the other guys in this group are all they all have a piece of the puzzle, don't they? You know, one of them said, to control the people, you control the food. To control the nation, you control the money. To control the world, you control the energy. Coincidence? I think not. So, and you would think he would stand up and say no to the mayor. Don't do this. These are poor. They can't afford. Let's help them. We'll buy them all. We'll buy everybody in the country electric vehicles. And we won't have to have any 15-minute cities. You know, cities where you get fined if you go across to another section too many times. So there's lots of things to pray about. To pray that this that our government wakes up. But I think our government, our leader said our leader during the campaign said BB, the BBB slogan, which is the same slogan as that group. Coincidentally, they're all using it. So I think this is it. I think, you see, you must look at what's happening in other countries, because like our good neighbors to the north, that leader was trained by this particular group. So was the guy in France, where there's a civil, which is being burned down. I predicted several years ago, Waterloo, that's going to get torched. Let me tell you, because there's a lot of stuff in there that people would think is pornographic, though it's not. I mean, consider it ours. And as paintings, some religious paintings in there, that's going to get torched. I'm sure they know it. Hey, they let Notre Dame burn. I mean, everything, no love lost between me and France, I'll tell you that. Oh my God. But these leaders and people in England are saying, and just like in our country, why are the people that we elect new people, they promise to do good things, and then when they get in, they all follow the dictates of a particular group of people that have money and power. It doesn't matter who you elect. That's the problem. That's our problem. And it seems like I have never seen so much this past weekend. I've never seen so much go down this past weekend. So, look, if there's a God, pray. Put all your worries and your burden on him and trust in him. It will give you peace. If there's a God, then and we have that trust, we need his help. If there isn't a God, meditate. Take your burden off your shoulder. Take the stress off of your system, because we're all going to die of sickness if we don't. Meditation is really important. I can do any kind of meditation you want, because a stress relieving meditation where you let it go, you can let it go and put it into God's hands. Just imagine, and it doesn't matter who's out there and what your religion is, you close your eyes, breathe deep, and say, take it, Lord, it's too much for me. This is too much for me. I don't know what to do. We're little. We're poor. We don't know what to do. We don't have the capacity to fix this. But there are many hands. We have many, and they know that. And that's why if you block out the sun, you're not going to have many hands. But we have many hands and many hearts and many minds. And maybe there is something that the people still have. That if all of us, that's why it doesn't matter what religion you are, if you believe or you don't believe, stop putting up barriers. Stop, you can, your mission, the mission to prove God does exist or does not exist is completely futile to what's happening in the world. You're totally, by doing that, you're wasting valuable time where you could be working with your fellow human to better the world, because you cannot eliminate these elements, because these are the elements of life. And everything in that movie that was made over 20 years ago totally was disproven. Why is Obama living on the ocean on I forget how many acres. I just know it's almost $12 million on the ocean. Why are they all buying up real estate and they're lending money to people to buy real estate on the ocean? Why are the people who are saying that everything's going to run? I mean, everything is a lie. And it seems like it's a lie to take more land, take more power, get more money, lower the population, so more of the good stuff, the natural resource is theirs. I think it's a complete money grab. And like all these ideologies kept telling us in the 20th century, that we are useless eaters. Many people don't deserve to be alive. The ideology is today is just this, everything is death. It's not propagating life. And it's making it too expensive to even have a family. Though they're paying for some families to live, because it's a way, I think, the end is real estate, especially in a part of the world that's going to be warm enough, even if you do cool the planet. And after everything is taken care of, then the planet can go back to that warm weather, and you will have lived very comfortably. And then you can go back to the other places in the world. So I think these people who have money and wealth, I think they'll be living a long time, because they have money and power, and they have the means, and the science and the technology has moved so much forward. These people are going to live a long time. I truly believe that. So this is the long game. But we have to do everything we can. And the most important thing is to not poke an argument about, People who believe in God might die, and then either, like Hitchens said, either there's a God and no afterlife, or an afterlife with no God. We believe and we've experienced, and there's always that possibility. And those who don't believe might find out that there is a God. But you see that right now, the most important thing is to be good to each other and not create divisions, not split each other up into different groups. We can't. Divided we fall. United we stand, divided we fall. That's probably the most important thing that we all need to remember. I'm sure even if you don't believe in God, or if you do believe in there's a God, there's other things you might like. You might like the same sports teams. You might like the same food. You might like the same places to visit. You might like the same TV shows. You might like similar books. You might like similar authors. You might like similar types of study, like science, astronomy, physics, history. There may be so many things you have, of course, comedy, but there may be so many things that you have in common that maybe you can leave that out the door. And when you're together, just be good people, be good to each other. Don't tear each other down, because we have to keep ourselves healthy. We have to keep ourselves strong. Why should people with money and power win over the poor? Why is somebody who's disabled not have? Look at the guy who almost lived forever there with the disease. I consider myself the most luckiest man on the face of the earth. Lou Gehrig's disease, Stephen Hawking. I mean, supposedly he was this incredible genius, yet he was completely, and he couldn't speak. And somehow I don't think he said any of those things. But he did live, and maybe during the time that he did it, he was a great mind, and he contributed a lot. And he was an atheist, as it turns out. It's like, just because somebody is disabled doesn't mean they don't have a talent that can't be contributed to the world. There is a value. See, the difference between having a God there and not a God is that you are open to a dictator. If you say, I have human rights, and no man can take that away unless you live under a dictator, unless you live under totalitarian, authoritarian rule in these particular political ideologies, because the dictator, at a whim, you're following the rules, and the next moment the rules change. Oh, what did the Ministry of Truth say today? The rules change. And so when the dictator says you don't have human rights, you have no rights, and you think you do, say, oh, well, I'm going to go online and I'm going to tell off all the people who believe in God. Yeah, you have a right to do that. And the people who believe in God have a right to speak back to you. You have a right to not believe in God. We have a right to believe in God. We can completely disagree with you or agree with many things that you say. There's a lot of things Hitchens said that I agree with. Absolutely. And maybe we are deluding ourselves. Who knows? But you don't know. You don't really know. You can't say for certain that it isn't true, because a lot of people can walk up to you and say, this is my experience. This is why it's so unusual. This is, to me, it's like, this really, really is different. So I can't say God doesn't exist because I've had this experience. Your life experience, and of course the atheists may have a different life experience. But dividing each other, and that be you've won nothing, because the human race is at stake. Actually, all life is at stake. Animals will die. I mean, we have a volcanic winter. Spray the sun, it will go so fast. We are at 0.04% carbon. 30 years ago, it was 0.03%. And then China put up all over the world, tons and tons of carbon spilling, and only raised 1%. Well, not 1%, 0.01%. That's not even a tenth. 0.01% it raised. When it hits 0.02%, life dies. All life dies. So this is not the right strategy, and it's being implemented by people that we know have had excursions to warm places and have bought out the media, and the people who are running, the people who take care of us. I don't want to go into that too deeply because I think you're all knowledgeable out there and you know what I'm talking about. Some people can be very intelligent, but they're on the edge of, you can be on like the edge of insanity because you're so intelligent. And or some people have lived in a very closed privilege. And when we say privilege, it's not people with white skin, because you really need to ask them what their life experience, and you might even find out that they're not really all white, but they might have been very poor. Hello there, Mark Dietz. So united we stand is a truism, but we can also segregate into smaller communities of like-minded people to escape the push of globalism, homeschooling, trading with other like-minded communities. That is absolutely right. But it seems like, I don't know if, did you read the article, what the mayor of London is doing? It seems like your life is, and these people are too poor to move. And there's the guy who worked to break away from the big unelected body of leaders. And people chose to break away. And all of a sudden, he cannot access anything. See, this is all, it's so simple. Just shut the tap off. Put the pressure on. Make sure that when you have enough money that you can get somebody elected that is on your side, it's very easy because there's a lot less people in positions of power than there are people. So if you have the money to pay to back a certain candidate, especially those candidates that they have trained, they've trained to do a certain thing. And if they do, they get more money. So you see, money can kind of buying everything. Canceling, yeah. Yeah, you see, do you see how simple it is? All of us. And this is like, you say, oh, prayer doesn't work. Something's got to be done. And we have to keep our sanity too. And if there's a God, I want to put my worries in his hands. I want to take this anxiety off of myself. Because I'm struggling to survive, and I really am much more in the hole than I even thought I was. That's why a separate economy is, yes, it is, but who's going to do it? Who's going to help us? Who in the government isn't bought off? 95% of our government gives money to the side that is actually working hand in hand with the wealthiest people in the world who have all got all the money and the power and want to lower the population, you know? And some of the people on the other party we call in name only. They're not even, they're not for us, they're also bought off. There's very few. And that's the problem. Where the money lies, they always say, follow the money. Mark Twain said, money is the root of all evil. It's true. And there's so many things that happened this weekend. Instead of having us just enjoy it with our family, I was alone all day. I don't see anyone, and the neighbors were even gone. I heard some fireworks going off by, it must be home fireworks or something like that, away, but people that are not near me. So people are probably away on vacation, and but it would be nice this weekend to have just enjoyed that, or even just for me, just say, okay, it's the 4th of July weekend. Just let's not even think of it. Let's just relax. Instead, every single day this weekend, it's been something. And it's so much and it's so big. And our leaders are not helping us. Like, where were they standing up saying, hey, there are people who can't even afford fuel, even with fuel assistance, it's so high. The kingy over there said, because he's not going to help pay for anything. He gave some of his wind farm just before the coronation. Oh, what you do is you give some goodwill, so you need some people out on the streets. But now he's saying all his palaces and castles are going to be cold. Oh, all your palaces and castles are going to be cold. Oh my God, that's just, and all the acres and acres of land, billions, hundreds of billions of acres of land you own. Why don't you demolish all your residents except one? We'll let you have one. And take all the demolished material, and you can burn that for fuel, and that will last you forever. You and your family, that will last forever. And then all your property can go wild, and we can use these farms to feed the people. I think that's a great idea. How about Felina for president? Felina for president. How about that? I think that's a swell idea. If you, especially, he is God's representative on earth, yet he's representing, it's almost like but you see, when you believe that God has picked you, but he led such a closed, privileged life, he has no idea. And when you think God has really picked you, you see, there's religion, of course, and there's the Catholic Church, which is completely, thank you, Mark. I got one vote. That's great. I would do what was right. It's true, they say everybody has their price. Yeah, that's why it's easy that all these leaders, they all have their price. They all have their price. But you can convince yourself, or you could be mad. There's a city called Poundbury. Look into that. When he made that, and it's very perfect and controlled. Remember, like in Shrek, that's that song, the first Shrek, something is a perfect place, and everybody was like a marionette or something, and the John Lithgow, Duloc, was it Duloc was a perfect place? And the king there, who actually was short, but he put on stilts to pretend he was tall. So he even was fake. He wasn't who he really was. And he wanted to marry Princess Fiona, except she turned out to be whatever Shrek was. Shrek was a what? What was Shrek? He was a Felina for president. Yes! Spread that all over. Felina for president. Felina for queen of the world, huh? Let's say, can you imagine if I walked in and I said, okay, I don't care how much money or power you have. I'm the queen of the world. Actually, I'm empress of the universe. And I say above all of you, and don't feel my wrath, because I'm worse than that guy in Star Wars, was the guy who looked like he could have been played by Ozzy Osbourne, but Ozzy Osbourne is too drugged up to run the universe. I forgot his name. An org. Yeah, that's right. He was an org. She turns out to be an org. But that Duloc was a perfect place. It's kind of like, maybe that was a play on Poundbury. But it was very, very controlled. And he doesn't believe in a God. He, years ago, I saw this footage about, it's a Jungian thing. And Lauren Vanderpost, who believed that who taught him that you could have a wife and a mistress. So he planned to always have a wife and a mistress. He never planned to just have a wife and be faithful to. He had a Jungian belief in God, as his friends were talking about, and this was made many years ago. It said that it's a Jungian belief in God. It's like God is the inner thing, it's your psyche, but there really isn't a God. And he did have a temple. It isn't like he goes and prays. It's like he centers to find his inner God, but it's not the God. It's not a God that's going to see, even let's say there is no God, right? But you have a belief that you say, you know what, I have to see, some people do need to be told that you better do the right thing. You better treat people right. You better, it's always good, even if it's just to leave the world a better place, better than you found it. Because some people, you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged. And I always believe that God will look like the person you hate the most. If you hate a race, they're going to be that race. If you hate a particular religion, God's going to be that. Whatever you hate the most, that's you're going to be presented. I'm sorry, this is who I am. It's like, that's going to be the big shock. But if you don't have hate in your heart for your fellow man, you know what I mean? If you try to do kindness and be good, then maybe you'll see what God, and because God knows that no matter what God looks like, whoever Jesus, what his skin color or anything about him was in this life, we'll love him anyway. We'll love him because we love him and we love our fellow human. No matter what color or religion, ethnicity, creed, anything. So that will be irrelevant. And we'll get to see, if you love, you'll get to see exactly what God looks like, who exactly God is, because you don't hate, But if you do hate, that is who God is going to be. I think that's it. You always keep that in the back of your mind, and maybe you'll be kind to everybody, because Jesus said that famous, the one I like the most. One of the teachings I like the most is those who do it to the least of mine, he does it to me. What he's talking about is there's a group, and he describes it as one side is the sheep and one side is the goats. And the goats were supposedly all followers of his, except they didn't do his Father's will, right? And the sheep didn't know who Jesus was. They didn't know anything about Jesus. And this is when everybody's, after they've died and they're in heaven, they're up there. And Jesus said, when I was hungry, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was sick, you comforted me. Lord, when did we do these things to you? He who does these things to the least of mine, he does it to me. Which says that anybody could be God. Anybody could be God. And if that's the case, you treat everybody well. And Jesus said, to those who cry, Lord, Lord, I will say, I do not know you, because you have not done my Father's will. And he tells you exactly what his Father's will is. You clothe the naked. When you see someone hungry, clothed, lonely, isolated, homeless, in prison, even if they've done something wrong, you still treat them like a valuable soul, God's child. There's something beyond the body. It's more than our human selves, human rights, and that this is the soul embodied in this person who is in jail is also God. We have to treat them well, because if we don't treat people well, and we say we're Christian or we believe in God, and we do the opposite. And then we say, oh, well, we're going to go to heaven because we believe in God or we believe in Jesus. And we think that they're not going to go to heaven. But wait a second. If you were a better example, like Christians have not been good examples, because it's like, see, the difference is are you following the teachings? Are you following what Jesus taught? Because if you were, you'd be a good example, right? You'd be a good example. And maybe they'd be a believer, or maybe they would just be a better person. And like Jesus said to the lambs who did not even know Jesus's name. They didn't know who Jesus was. So they said, Lord, when did we do these things for you? He who does these things to the least of mine, does this to me. They didn't even know him. So it wasn't about them accepting him as their Lord and personal Savior, crying, Lord, Lord. It's an incredible teaching. It means that anybody is God. He's saying everybody you treat well. Everybody you treat with respect. Because we believe in man's capacity to do better, to change, to be better people. So if you believe in God or you don't believe in God, it makes the world a better place if we treat each other well. So I wanted to read some scripture, and those are thoughts. That's a deeper. That's what that teaching means. That's what was going on in that teaching. These are the lambs who did the Father's will, didn't know Jesus at all, and he said to those who did know Jesus, those who did know God, those who cried, Lord, Lord, all the time, he says, I will say I don't know you because you haven't done my Father's will, and I told you what my Father's will was. Do not let the right know what the left is doing. When you give, do not know what the right know. Don't let the right know what the left is doing. You just do it. And you don't do it for reward or expectation. You don't do it for something in return. You just give. And so that means you give blindly. Like Lady Justice should be blind because the person could be innocent. You could be in that situation and being falsely accused is terrible. That's why you need representation. You need justice. You need the trial to be fair because you could be innocent. I don't know, I look at this world and I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. But what we can do and what we should do is to be the best people that we can be to each other, to wake each other up, not argue about stupid things. And it's just like, it's irrelevant. It's like I admire Christopher Hitchens because he actually turned out to be a good person. And most of his friends believed in God. He had them over. He had a great time. It was the 9/11 thing that threw him for a loop, that what religion was capable of. That set him on the rest. So sometimes things, and also his mother committed suicide. His mother ran away with a lover, and the lover convinced her to commit suicide. She left the father, and I guess she was very vulnerable and was treated very badly by his father. So his father was very distant and cold, and there may be in some abuse there. And so I think he resented that. Why didn't anyone save my mother? Sometimes we do things, we take certain turns in our lives because of things that happen. So why didn't God protect her? Why doesn't God, there's certain people that have suffered and died or still living through horrible circumstances, why didn't God help? And He's right. And I think he was, since his friends, other than the Four Horsemen, which, turned out to be not nice people. if you find out, I didn't think that of them, that they were, like, in general, probably, decent people. But then the more I heard about them, actually, they're not nice people. Hitchens had friends. They didn't. Hitchens had friends who were Christians, Catholics, Jews, people who believed in God. Had them over. They were good friends. So there was something different about Hitchens. There was a whole different story, and we become who we are sometimes because of our life experience. Makes us to think a certain way. That's why our life experience is bad, and don't you deserve some good in this life? So let's treat others how you should have been treated, how your mother should have been treated. Start treating people that way. Do the opposite. Don't be more angry or go around trying to convince people there is no God. And that's going to be the day you die. You've achieved a lot. There is no God, and mankind died in a famine, and nobody stopped to help. If this is the only life we have to do something, whether you be atheist or believer. We have, and starting, you start with being good to your neighbor. We have to depend on each other. Like at the end of Streetcar Named Desire, I've always depended on the kindness of strangers. The doctor was leading her off to the insane asylum where they were going to give her a lobotomy. They did that to women. They thought that was a cure for PMS. If they would you jab something in their eye and you mix up their frontal lobe. That happened to the writer's sister. That happened to her. She became depressed when her father lost his shoe shop, his shoe company. And she had a fiance who left her because there was no money. And so she got depressed. And they sent her to get a lobotomy. See, that's what happened to people. They sterilized the insane, who they deemed insane. They just sterilized. I took care of a woman whose uterus was removed because she was crazy. It's like, I like crazy. They're fun. But they removed that. But she never dated anyone. It isn't like she was going around trying to have sex with people. She wasn't. She didn't. But see, the government decided. And what if they just we decide that you're crazy or you're depressed, and our cure is, here, poke this in the eye and swish around the fly. Then they started cutting open the sides. You see in Cuckoo's Nest, they do that to Jack Nicholson because he was stirring up trouble. He shouldn't have been there. I mean, they threw him in there, but he wasn't crazy. And at the end, they do that to him. And then they called him Chief, who's a Native American. He was there. He shouldn't have been there either. He never said anything. He just didn't talk about anything. And he smothered him because he knew that he couldn't live life like that. And then he grabbed the water fountain and he threw it through the window and broke the bars. And then he escaped. And he was the one who flew over the Cuckoo's Nest. But see, socialism, and also socialism goes hand in hand with atheism. Communism, fascism. It was one of them. They did not place, the rule was that God had to be under their party, National Socialist Workers' Party. It had to be below, but the state is first, they come first. In communism, there was no God, period. State is everything. State, you were just a cell in the state, and you live and die for the state. It's atheism. You have no rights. You have no life. There is no uniqueness. Everybody is just, that's it. And if you are sick, you get cold. You get called, if you speak against the state, you disappear. Your family never sees you again. They just pick you up and take you off the street. And it's never worked because it's never worked. It's been applied many times. I was told by someone I graduated with, no, I didn't graduate, he didn't graduate, that, that's because it was applied by humans. See, capitalism is bad. And I said, I was describing communism, and he goes, oh no, that's fascism. No, that's communism. They're cousins to each other. And they said, well, communism's the evil one. But the guys who run this group, they're good. Wait a minute, if you're a communist, shouldn't you hate the really wealthy people who are in control? Aren't you like going, but if the failure of communism is because people were in charge, then maybe that's the same failure with capitalism. I don't see, but it's been applied. When you know the creed and the principles, it is about exterminating people. It is about total control of your thoughts and speech. So back to work I go. Glad I found you online. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for joining in. God bless you. And why don't I clicked open some tabs, and we're thinking of Rob, who would be into this conversation all the way here. And we'll end with a prayer of St. Francis, because we're praying for the world. And the prayer of St. Francis could be said by anyone, except, of course, at the end, we're born to eternal life. They might not believe that, but it is a way of living. It is a good way of living. Let's see, what is this? Let's read Psalm 22. My God, Psalms written by David, Old Testament. In the prophets section, it's organized in different sections. The laws, and then the prophets. And anyway, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far my cries of anguish. My God, I cry out by day, but you do not answer. By night I find no rest. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you our ancestors put their trust. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried out and were saved. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am worn, and I am not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. Yet you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you. Even at my mother's breast, from birth, I was cast on you. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near, and there is no one to help. May bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircled me, roaring lions that tear their prey, open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart has turned to wax. It is melted within me. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You lay me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and feet. All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. Rescue me from the mouth of the lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly, I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him, revere him, all your descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him. He has listened to his cry for help. From you comes the theme of my praise in the great assembly. Before those who fear you, I will fulfill my vows. The poor eat and will be satisfied. Those who seek the Lord will praise him. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth will remember, and the Lord turn to help. And all the families of the nations will bow down before him, for dominion belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations. All the rich of the earth will feast and worship. All who go down to the dust will kneel before him. Those who could not keep themselves alive, posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord. They will proclaim his righteousness, declaring to a people yet unborn, he has done it. That sounds a lot like, actually it sounds some things you'll find in Isaiah 53, which comes later than the Psalms. And then also it is reprised if you read the Gospel of Mark. It echoes Psalm 22 very much. But it does sound like what Jesus endured. And it does sound like what we're enduring or about to endure. That's why knowing that God endured such things, so God understands. God knows. That's why we can turn to him and lay our hearts at his feet. Ask him for comfort. Many people are alone. They don't have another human being to comfort them or talk to them. What should they do? That's why we have a Lord, and what he endured has echoed through the ages, through the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. What happened? Find that rather interesting. And as we think and we pray and we keep Rob in our thoughts, and he is enduring such trials and shall endure such trials, we'll pray. To end it, we'll pray. I was going to, God save the people. Oh God, have mercy when the people lord the people, not thrones or crowns, but men. Funny, the gospel, that was written in the 60s, or it actually was written in 1970, 1971. It's written after Jesus Christ Superstar. Jesus Christ Superstar came first. The reason why that was written was because a man came to them and said, I want to teach the Bible to the youth, children, teenagers, and have them to be really interested in it. Could you put this to music? So that's why they wrote Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and then they said, what do we call it? And at the time, Tim Rice was listening to this man. He looked down, and there was an advertisement for Elton John, and it said Elton John Superstar. And he said, what about Jesus Christ Superstar? Written through the eyes of Judas, which is the first. People don't realize that Judas is also, or technically is the star. Technically, he's the one who's the narrator, but technically has equal billing. And the idea is that what if Judas was a puppet to make sure Jesus was crucified? And so they were both, Jesus was a puppet and he was a puppet of God. And they're kind of like, well, when you do read the Bible, you read the scriptures, you find that time Jesus does feel like he's being a part of a master plan that he can't control. Just take this cup away from me. My God, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is my God, why have you forsaken me? That he feels like that. So they wrote it through those eyes, and is the first production actually made Jesus much more human, and the more we see him as not just God. Before that, it was very lofty, like the way the book of John is written is always lofty, but the vulnerability of Jesus is why he died. So that's why he suffered. If we think of him just walking the earth, oh yes, I'm God, I don't feel anything and I'm just fine, and mentally I can endure this fine. He didn't. It was maddening for him. He did a lot of praying, a lot of suffering. He sweat great drops of blood, which they say that's when you're in so much stress that the veins, capillaries in your head burst. As you're sweating, they burst because of the stress that you're enduring, and that blood can come out. There's an actual scientific word for it. So we must see him as a vulnerable man. Otherwise, we don't understand the suffering. And if we see and understand that he suffered in this way, then we know that he understands us, understands our suffering, especially what we're going through right now. So, in the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant so much that I do not seek to be understood as to understand, to be consoled as to console, to love, to be loved as to love. So it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning, forgiving, that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born. That we are born to eternal life. Good night, everyone. God bless you. Happy the rest of 4th of July. And pray to God. Pray. Be still and know that I am God. Be at peace. And give it to God. And go out and make this world a better place. And be kind to one another. Don't find differences. Find areas that we have in common. No matter who they are, I'm sure you have something in common with them That's what brings us together, and that's what destroys all the hatred, bigotry, and that word within all that stuff. It destroys it because we see each other as human beings, and we can share, and we have to be open to listening that person that's listening may have suffered as much as us or more, or we can understand each other because, I didn't think you suffered. I didn't think you endured that. I did too. I thought it was just me or my community, but you endured that too. See, that's a coming together, and I'm not sure that they want us to know that we all suffer. Anyway, God bless you, and good night, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you again, and say some prayers tonight for Rob. This whole show is dedicated to Rob, and we got in the troubles of this world because that was a part of the show, was to talk about that. And Rob always likes to talk about those kinds of things. So in memory of him, in memory of Rob, we had a good chat tonight about things. Alrighty, good night. God bless you, and I'll see you again sometime soon. Okay, bye-bye.